Thank you for staying tuned. There's still the conversation here on Lagos Television. Of course, our guest is joining us this morning via Zoom, and together we'll be taking a look at rising insecurity and the imperative of state police. This morning we have joining us the CEO, Aquiline Intelligence, and is also a security analyst, Onyekachi Adekoya. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to the viewers.
Right, let's start this way because we still have the issue of the Benue attack still very fresh in our memories. And along the line during this issue, the governor of Benue State, Governor Alia, had also called, intensified the call for state police vis-a-vis the calls from others that are saying this is the time that perhaps residents also need to start looking at self-defense. But for you, taking a look at that attack and numerous attacks we've had before then, what was your position on sustained calls for state police?
Well, my position is that I'm surprised we're still having those calls. The current president, commander-in-chief, was also one of the proponents of state police. He's done his 2 years in office. There's been no whiff as much as even a conversation, concrete conversation. See, the conversations was moved from the TV houses, from print media, to a paper for consideration. Recall that President Buhari wanted to advance this conversation, and there was a bill in the National Assembly. But for you to amend such segments of the Constitution, you need at least 2/3 from all the state houses of assembly. So the governors who were the ones clamoring for state police, when they had their opportunity to support it, declined that support. And the reasons they gave were the reason of budget. So if the clamor is again rising, and I don't see what is stopping the executive from sponsoring an executive bill, or even Governor Alia asking a senator or a rep to sponsor a legislative bill to that effect, calling for state police. So what I would rather see is a shift from just mere having a sing-song to actions on the ground.
Okay, let's talk about the approach of our security agents in tackling these security challenges that we have in different parts of the country. Do you think there is need for a change of approach, because it appears that the strategy that they've been using so far is not really working?
Yeah, so a change of approach, yes. I think we also must shy away and stop all these presidential directives or the president going to, for the Benue State, yes, 200 people lost their lives, and we do sincerely empathize. The primary responsibility of internal security is that of the subnational government, not the federal government, as it were. So when the president made the sweeping statement and said, get the people, I was on another TV station and said, that statement means nothing on the ground, because just after the president leaves, another incident will happen. And true to it, 2 days later, another community was attacked in the Benue. So what must change in approach is that rather than look to Abuja for a savior, the people must now hold their governors responsible for internal security. And I always make the point to say that the governors know how to mobilize the state for an election. They should use the same principles, the same approach, and the same emphasis to mobilize the entire state to improving internal security in their states. This issue, as with other issues, raises again the question, what are the governors doing with the security vote? So the approach that must change is a subnational leadership approach on matters of internal security. Any other thing will just be us addressing the issues and going round and round in circle, because the military cannot dominate the entire space. We have over 923,000 or 30,000 square kilometers of landmass. The federal police cannot dominate the space. The Air Force or the Navy cannot completely do it alone. See, so civil-led, community-initiated policing programs at the grassroots level, from the local government up to the states, then to the national, is the way that we should begin to go. And I think that's the principal thing in what must change.
Right. While speaking earlier, you alluded to the fact that one of the reasons the governors gave for foot dragging on state police issues is budgetary allocation. But as we speak, if we look at the current structure of the federal police system in Nigeria, budgeting and underfunding and also resources is also a big issue. So if we have that at the federal level and the governors are giving that as an excuse, would we ever move away from this issue? What are your suggestions as to how the governors, even though you also did say that, you asked the question, what are they doing with the allocations? After all, they receive security votes. How should they begin to channel these thoughts towards ensuring that issues of budgetary allocation or resources are not hindering the creation of state police?
Okay, so let's start with the definition of an excuse. An excuse is one more reason to remain where you are, or you're giving a reason as to, why we're not getting the job done. Every governor has a budget that he brings before his state house of assembly. So budgetary allocation can be made. Two, laws, the state make laws. You have the Amotekun creation, you have Ebubeago, you have the civilian JTFs. So it is not as though that the governors are without the instruments of states to address issues of internal security. The bigger problem I find is ignorance on the part of some people who will make those decisions. Ignorance in the sense that when we think about internal security, we first think bring in a military expert. But public order, public safety has many branches. The criminal justice system is also a branch of public order, ensuring public safety. So the military cannot be the one-stop shop to all our problems. Bringing in a multi-sector group of experts, both from, and again, I don't want to sound as though we're inviting the private sector into statecraft. But if you have a state like Lagos, for example, that has a good chunk of Nigeria's GDP, there's no way you'll be having a conversation around industrial security, public safety, without having elements of the private sector in that conversation.
Right.
At the very bare minimum, you should have members of the academia in that room. Let me give an example. When we're not in a state of war, we've always argued that the National Security Advisor doesn't have to be retired from any of the services, because it's a policy position, can be led by a member of the academia, so that we are framing this issue of national security properly. So when you say what more can the governors can do a lot.
Okay.
In the first instance, they can go to school. They can go to school, go to the National Institute of Policy and Strategy in Kuru.
Right.
On the issues of national security. Yeah, so there are a number of things they can do, really.
Okay, so would you allude the porosity of our borders to the increase in the number of attacks that we have witnessed recently? And how do we begin to monitor these borders effectively in such a way that these foreigners will not be able to come into the country to wreak havoc again?
Okay, so you touch on a very important point. What you are seeing as porosity of border is symptomatic of the domestication of the forces that should be ensuring the territorial integrity of Nigeria. If the military, whose primary remit is to ensure territorial integrity of Nigeria, is now rolled up in over 31 operations across different states in Nigeria, you can imagine how much more you can expect the military to do. So the porosity of the border is just because we lack emphasis where it should be. That's why I said in the opening statement, the job of the federal government, primary, is to focus on the territorial integrity, on the security of our borders. The current chief of defense staff is making a fair point, and I hear him. It's almost the same thing that David Mai is making, to say, why are we using asphalt when we have concrete? So he's making a case for the fencing of our borders, and he shared good example of where this principle has worked. Perhaps we need to begin to look a bit at that. But the federal government is doing too much. Imagine federal government getting in primary health care, getting involved in primary education, things that the government should be focusing on policy and driving national strategy. But what we find in our own context is that the federal government is creating policy, is also involved in implementation. So Nigeria has a wicked problem. And the biggest part of the wicked problem is that we expect the federal government to do almost every other thing. So the clamor for local government autonomy has its place. The clamor for states to do more also has its place. If the federal government is relieved a bit on the too many things it is doing, perhaps we can begin to focus more decisively on the issues of our border, and ensuring that we deepen resilience at the border and have infrastructure in place to deal with issue of porosity. The West African Free Movement Protocol will always be an issue, but there's an innovative way to deal with that. The African Continental Free Trade Area is also an issue, but nothing stops us from properly channeling people, to the delineated points of access, documenting them, and ensuring that we know who is entering into Nigeria and as at when. So until the federal government is able to pull out itself from the so many other things it is doing, there are things that will continue to suffer a bit of lack of attention or proper attention across the country.
Right. Let's go back to the argument for the creation of state police. I mean, when we started, you did say that you really can't understand why we're still where we are at the moment, because we keep talking and there are no concrete actions that have been taken. I'm still using the Benue attacks as a case study. Would you say that indeed the positives of creating the state police will far outweigh what we have at the moment when you look at all they can bring on board? Because I mean just minutes ago you did say that we have this way of expecting everything to come from the federal government, but then we do have other arms of government. We have the state and the local, and so if we create a state police as it should be, do you think that we would at least move away from where we are at the moment with the barrage of security issues or security challenges that we're dealing with?
Okay, so let's even just theorize a bit on the issue of state police. What is the cardinal principle to state policing or county or community-led grassroots-based security programs? The first principle is that you take command to where command is needed. The principle of that chain of command. So you must bring command to where it's needed. Also control. In what we currently run, the state governors have command, but they do not retain control. Okay, the president retains the control. The principle of local community-led initiative on security also would require that the local government chairman become the chief security officers of their own local government. So there's nothing stopping county-led, local government-led security initiatives. If in your generating IGR is not rocket science. The local government has FAC allocation. The states have FAC, and they also have IGR. So if we take security, what's the primary responsibility of government, as the Constitution says? The protection of life and property.
Right.
So if we say this is important to the subnational government, when we look at the subnational annual state budgets, we should see how important internal security is to them, reflected in their budgetary position for this element.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk about information sharing and intelligence gathering now among our security agencies. When you look at the approach so far in our quest at tackling this insecurity problem facing the country, would you say it is getting better, or there are areas where we need to do more?
My brother, we don't have an intelligence sharing problem. It will surprise you to know we do not have an intelligence problem. We have action after intelligence, okay? Because when you have actionable intelligence and you don't have the logistical capability to take action, because action requires logistics. So let me give you an example. You hear that, for example, this is just an example, we're in Lagos State. You hear that an attack is being planned at a condo, for example. The RSS command and control center receives the information. So what would the center do? They have to mobilize resources to preempt that attack, provide resources to handle off areas that may be affected, and then conduct a surgical operation to eliminate the risk or threat. If the IRS doesn't have vehicles, if it doesn't have B vehicles to say, okay, you need 100 men for that operation, you cannot ferry 100 men from Ikeja to Igondo. That's logistics problem. In moving that convoy of 100 men, you must also think about convoy protection. You don't have vehicles that can give the fighting force a bit of protection so that by the time they are getting to the point where the action is needed, they have not been degraded to about 30 men. So you don't have that capability. You don't have persistent and persistent intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance over the area. So every time your team pulls out, they are pulling out on a blind fighting operation. So they fall into military ambushes and the rest. So you see that very quickly, you can have intelligence, but you don't have the means to take action based on intelligence. The DSS has a station chief in every local government in Nigeria. If you do not know, you can know now for free. We have 704 local governments in Nigeria. There's a state director in every state. The police has the State Intelligence Bureau, Federal Intelligence Bureau. The Army has DMI. Different formations have their own int officers and int units. The DIA has its own set of intelligence. The NIA has intelligence. DSS has, NSA has intelligence. Even the chiefs and the local kings also have intelligence. You would hear that in some cases people say they reported to the police, they reported to the army, but nothing was done. So yes, intelligence sharing, but again, logistics is the bigger problem. That's why when Governor Wike said that he's not the chief security officer of his state, rather he considers himself as a chief logistics officer, providing requisite tools and capability for law enforcement to get the job done. So my brother, we don't have an intelligence problem. That is not what we are, far from it. We don't have an intelligence.
Right. As it stands, Nigeria herself has shortage of manpower in the police system. I mean, the federal structure, as we speak. A report put it at 370,000 police officers to over 237 million citizens, which is a far cry from the UN suggestion on the police to citizen ratio. My point here is, if we do have a shortage of manpower at the federal level as we speak, would we then be able to make progress if peradventure the state governors wake up tomorrow and agree to these? How do you see the transition from the federal police system to, I know the states would recruit on their own, but if you take a look at the shortage that we currently do have and what the state governors would have to grapple with the creation of state police, how do we marry this shortage in a short period of time? Did you get the question?
We've seen in this case. Yes, I got the question. How would the states and how would Nigeria grapple with the shortage? Yeah, it's a shortage by design.
By
in
design.
the first instance.
Okay.
So it speaks again to what I've been saying, that the federal government is over-administrating. And so even the budgetary, take for instance, the police budget is over 500 billion. What is the federal government doing with 300,000? We don't need that. By design, we have 79 squadron, mobile police squadron across the country, which are like quick response force deployed by strategy. That if a state is having or a region is having, you can have quick response. But what do we have today? In that number, about half are protecting big men and private enterprise, which is another form of double taxation. Because the federal government pays the policemen, the company and the private people pay the policemen again. So why don't we get out of this issue of, there are a number of convoluted approaches that we have. If big people want security, go to licensed private security practitioners, procure security for them, give them a level of armament. If you want to go from 300-something thousand to about 100,000, well-equipped, resource standby, quick response force at the federal level, fine. Then the state and the federal government will enter into an agreement to absorb some of the indigenes. For Lagos, for example, was a component of the Lagos State contingent to the federal force. What's that for Jigawa? We need to streamline, we need to give this back. So how many will come back to the state? All that modality can be worked out.
Okay.
Weapon classifications can be worked out. Okay, state police, use your service pistol. We will limit your assault rifle to about 500 for a special response team, so that you don't have a state militia tomorrow and retain, decent level of armament at the federal. All that can be worked out. It's not an abnormality. What are our state police, our police on the roads doing with AK-47 rifles?
Okay.
So assault rifles. When you go to advanced client, they use service pistol. It makes the police more approachable. So, there's a lot of shenanigans that is masquerading itself as historical approach to security. The principles and assumptions upon which this current policing structure was bequeathed to us was not to protect us, but to protect the interests of our colonial overlords.
Wow.
And their merchant interests. So a police for the people has to be bettered with the aspirations of the people and the pain points of the people fully accommodated for.
Okay, I still want to take you back to my previous question. You said that we have enough intelligence, but logistics is our problem. If we are having logistics issues, what then is the justification for the huge sum of money that we always allocate in the national budget for defense? That is one. Secondly, the proposal to employ forest guards now, in what way is this going to assist us in tackling the problem of insecurity in the country?
I don't know how to approach your question.
Take it one after the other.
I chuckle a bit. Forest guard problem. The constitution that creates the army says that, they will do the job of the army and the military and any other internal security work assigned to them. Meaning that tomorrow the army can come and arrest you because it can do any other thing. The DSS also. So our laws overlap function. It doesn't allow for specialization. In an instance where the states are properly governed with profound respect to the governors governing the states, but in an instance where you don't have space and place, because nature abhors a vacuum, for armed criminal groups to fester, to thrive, to morph into transnational networks. In an instance where those are not our realities, would you really have a need for forest guards? Would you have that need for forest guards? The answer is no. You already have the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps, which is like National Reserve Guard Force. Every country has that. That is the remit of the Civil Defense Corps. But like I said, we like to over-administer. We are crazed about it, but we don't look at how we sync strategy and we approach. Nigeria has what is classed as a wicked problem. A wicked problem is a problem that requires multi-sets of approaches to address it without no assurance that, you deal the problem decisively and over a short period of time. So our problems are our political class, their framing of what our current set of security problem is, the understanding of it, and then the solution. So if you misframe this dimension, like the thought thief said, if you wrongly diagnose, you'll get the wrong solution. So that's what we're getting. So that's manifested in the ask for the forest guard. I don't blame the person asking for forest guard because it's also situational. Because you can see everybody's operating in a silo. The ESS has this, even the NSA has command. The office of the NSA should not be seen or heard. The NSA is not a cabinet appointee of Mr. President. He's just an aide. At the basic level of it, he shouldn't. The NSA should not be holding command over the military infrastructure. He's what is called by law the intelligence coordinator to oversee joint 3 agencies by law, to coordinate matters of intelligence, not to become the de facto deputy assistant commander-in-chief. That's the remit of Mr. President. So, my brother, I don't know where to start from this your question. It's a bit convoluted.
Okay, what about the other one about logistics? And a huge sum of money.
Yeah, what about logistics?
The other time you said we have enough intelligence, but logistics is our problem. So I'm now asking that we do allocate huge sum of money in our annual budget for defense, but it seems not to be reflecting with this logistics problem that you raised.
You want to make me cry now. Where do I start from? Nigeria is not able to produce the amount of rounds that we need for our military. We import live rounds. Don't know where we're going to with this question. We have DICOM that is supposed to, the Defense Industries Corporation, that's produced by the DICOM Act. Go and look at DICOM and go and look at what DICOM is doing. We say we are the giant of Africa, but we cannot even provide, we are not ammunition self-sufficient. We are not. Look at the sustained war between Russia and Ukraine. Over 50 countries against Russia. And Russia is holding off and still advancing on every front across. Why? Because they are resilient. The other day I heard that the contingent flew to America to beg the Americans to release the fighter helicopters we have paid for. Go through our history of defense procurement. We procured the Super A20, I think, Tucanos. Not everything we procured has been supplied. Not even the Chinese fully supply to us. Sometimes when they supply to us, they degrade the capabilities of what we are paid for, and they give us rubbish. Let me just land on this point. In 1986, about 1984 to 9, we had the Air B2 program. Nigeria produced in this country over 60 Air B2, it's called ABT-18 aircrafts. We were poised to become the aviation superpower of Africa. Okay, but Nigeria happened to that program. So if you're talking about procurement, how much can your naira procure? You look at the war in Israel and Iran, where one missile system is costing $1 million. You know how much that is in naira? What is your defense budget? $1 million is about 1.something billion already, just on one missile system. So we buy these advanced equipment to shoot one Hellfire missile. May cost about $100-something thousand. How many of those can our Air Force shoot, for Christ's sake?
Okay.
So this your budget. You can't do anything, sir.
All right. Before we allow you go,
corruption aside,
corruption also. Before we allow you go this morning, are we really ready as a country for state police like we're yearning for? One of the fears that some people have is also that state governors could also misuse the powers of state police structure. That's one. Then two, should we, as a matter of urgency, also look at how the Constitution can be amended so that, the exclusive rights given to the federal government in terms of security architecture can also be split?
Oh, absolutely. I'll start on the later, on the issue of revising what you have in the exclusive and concurrent list. Absolutely. Our current president has always been pro-subnational government. But again, like I said, it's 2 years down the line. We are not seeing the move in what even in terms of mining, some of the problems we have in insecurity manifest from mining. Uja would license a mining company, they go straight into a state and they begin to mine. The state government cannot cough. Yes, the state government will have some internal agencies to monitor its own territory, but logistics, no fuel, no vehicle for these agencies. When they get there, there's federal police, there's federal army at the mining site. What can the state government do? So, okay, the majority of the governors we have are from the ruling party, all right? And all the governors are singing. The Northern Governors Forum are singing the song. Southern governors, every governor is singing, but nothing is moving on the ground. So you ask me, should the Constitution not be reworked? That's a given. That's a given. We should be doing that. Who's going to do that? I'm not the one to do that. The president has to do that. Our governors must champion for it. Just to round up the thought, in the midst of all these things that we are talking about, the lack of political will and sincerity on the part of the governors, I put this squarely at the feet of the governors. The governors are the head of their parties in their respective states, save for Rivers State and Akwa Ibom, and perhaps Lagos State also. But the legal majority controls their party. If the governors are serious about, these constitutional changes, my brother, my sister, we will see the change. So let's bring this issue on the balance. The campaign for office of the governor has to be these issues, and let the governors be elected on these issues that are important to us at the subnational level. Because Abuja is not really that powerful. Nigeria is a makeup of different federating units that has more powers. The state governors have, to some extent, great powers. A state government can revoke the title of a federal agency and heaven will not fall. So, you see, power of the people are vested in the governor. The governors need to do more.
Okay, the final question from me this morning. Let's talk about a major component of fighting this insecurity problem, the welfare and the motivation for our security officers. When you assess it as we are presently, would you say it's enough to give these people the confidence to go and sacrifice their life?
I saw on social media a post where a policeman was complaining that after 30-something years of service, the police gave him 2 million as his I don't know what 2 million will not last for families a month. So I mean, if you talk about welfare, it's about logistics, about deliberateness, about planning. You see, the federal government again is about administrating. Nigeria government is like a man that has 37 wives, 36 plus 1, and the resources are meager, but the husband needs to keep the peace. So to save face, you make promises, you adjust there. You can't do everything you're supposed to do, so some things will fail. So the failure of welfare of the fighting force is a consequence of our design problem. They say if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you expect a different result, then maybe you need to also check your own state of mental health. So maybe we need to check our mental psyche as a people, because the current path we are on, it doesn't seem as though we are going anywhere serious. Okay, so some things must change fundamentally. And what I begin to say is that Mr. President must call the governors to a round table and lead this change forward. He has good political will. This can be done. A number of restructuring. We are reforming the economy, yes, but we must also reform the political structuring so that we can unleash and unlock growth within the subnational. Ondo State, for example, has the second largest bitumen deposit anywhere in the world, Ondo State. Our proven gas reserve as a country is net of over $83 trillion, just proven gas reserve. We have one of the finest gold ore in Ondo, in Zamfara. You've heard about the deep bitumen deposits, the quality of it. So we need to rework also the political framing of how we are as a people to unlock potential within the subnational level, you see. I'm coming back again to our political framing. That is at the heart of our problem. When we think that Abuja is our savior, is in Abuja, we will not task our minds and reach our full potential at the state level. So here or there, the ball falls again back at the governors, because even the president is from a state, as it were, and he has a governor.
All right, we'll have to leave this conversation here this morning. Thank you so much, Onyekachi Adekoya, CEO, Aquiline Intelligence, as well as a security analyst. Many thanks for finding time to join us on the program today. We appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
All right, of course, we've been speaking with our guest this morning, and he's taking us through, his own thoughts on this particular issue, meaning that every time we talk about these things, we always come back to the governors.
Honestly. And now they are getting so much money. So what some of them are really doing with this money is what I really do not know. Because Mr. President cannot be in Abuja and have his eyes everywhere. The governors are supposed to be the chief security officers of their state. But monthly, they go hand in cab to Abuja to go and collect money. And what they are really doing with this money is what we cannot see. And now they are getting so much.
It means two things. It means that the president needs to start holding them more by the jugular, as well as the people they govern also must begin to demand more from them. So they have two legs. If the presidency drags one leg and we, the electorate, drag one leg, they won't have a choice because they have to stand. So if you cannot stand when you go to Abuja, You cannot stand in your state.
Then you
There's
sit up.
trouble.
You sit up.
Then you will sit up. So, well, that's where we'll leave this side of the table this morning. We'll take a quick break. When the conversation returns, Adebimpe will be here with her Lagos conversation.
The views expressed on this program do not represent that of the producer, management of Lagos Television, or the Lagos State Government. They remain the perspectives of those expressing them. Thank you for staying with Lagos Television.